Good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Thursday, July 14th, 2022. It is 2:03 p.m. This is slated to go until 3 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. With me in the boardroom is Vice Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards. We have County Manager Ramiro Chavez and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We also have some staff joining us via Zoom to discuss our agenda item, which is Budget Department ARPA spending. So with that, am I handing it to Robin?
You're going to open up. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager. And as you said, we're here today at this work session to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act Recovery Fund that the county received from U.S. Treasury. The county, as you know, received $56 million, a little over $56 million in federal money, and we received that as a block grant. It came in 2 tranches. The county has received the second tranche, and what we haven't spent is sitting in the bank account, drawing interest.
How much is that?
Well, we'll go over how much has been spent in just a few minutes. As you heard me say a couple months ago, I looked at the rate of spending and got concerned that we're not going to be able to spend it all. On the current path we're on, we would not be able to spend it all by the federal deadline of December 31st, 2024. And there's a little bit of wiggle room there. We can have things obligated by that time. But I think we need to take a hard look because, as you've heard both me and Ramiro say, we can't wait until midway through 24 to decide, oh, maybe we're going to try a new tact on how to get it spent. It's been taking time to get things set up. So what we're going to talk about today is the current rate of expenditures. We'll let you know how much is spent, what's on deck, what our concerns are. We have some current allocation changes to recommend to the board that we're going to ask you to approve today. And then we have we're teeing up a community survey that we want to tell you about, and then we'll talk about next steps. So I'm going to turn it over to Diana to talk about the recovery spend rate to date.
Diana, you want to show your screen on the PowerPoint? Or
You've got the PowerPoint up, Ramiro.
I'm able to share mine, or did I hear you say that you were asking Ramiro to share?
let me share the screen. I think I have it.
Yeah, Brandy had set us up.
Okay.
So here we go. Okay, so that's today's agenda. And go ahead and go to the next page, Ramiro.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great, I can see that. So as Robin mentioned, so we have the 56.4 million. We did receive the second tranche of funds, and we just recently crossed over the 10 million mark in expenditures. And so that equates to 49% of the amount which commissioners have approved for projects, and 18% of the funds which have been both approved and earmarked. So next slide. Robin previously mentioned about some concerns that have been expressed about the funds, and these kind of fall into 3 areas of concerns. The first concern is the amount of funds which are still in the consideration status. So some of the funds have been approved for projects by commissioners, and some remain in the earmark stage. And while they are in the earmark stage, we can't really proceed towards putting these funds in contract and towards expenditure. So we wanted to open up a conversation with you about about that in general and also in particular with some specific projects. The second concern area is the slower pace of spending in a couple of these projects which have received approval and funding. One of them in particular, which definitely warrants more conversation, is the Decrease the Court Backlog project. Only 2% of the approved and earmarked amount has been spent to date. And then,
And what is that again? I missed that. What did you say that was?
Court backlog.
Court backlog.
Right, and you have in your packet, I'm sorry to interrupt, Diana, you have in your packet the allocation table that shows how much has been allocated. So like the court backlog, I can usually spot it by the large amount. It's on page 2, it's line 2.36, C is in court. The board has approved 1.3 million to spend. There's 6.7 million still earmarked that you've not approved to spend yet. And so far, they've only spent $167,000. And there's a lot behind that we can talk about. But this is, you know, when I see this much money obligated for this thing and it's going out that slowly, that in particular is one item that I'm going, you know, are we really gonna use this? Go ahead, Diana, I'm gonna turn it back to you.
okay, so another concern with the slower pace of spending is we noticed that there is one of the, at least one of the United Way programs, the grant programs, is struggling to spend their approved funds. And there are some reasons for that they have. The third area of concern is that some funds have been expended for projects. So for example, the nonprofit organization grants is spent out. The actual grants portion of the contract is spent out. There is some admin remaining. Next slide.
What do we call that fund? That we sent that down to Michael K. didn't we?
Well, the United Way wasn't through the EDC, it's through the United Way.
Okay, United Way. Okay.
Right.
Are you looking for a commissioner on the allocation spreadsheet?
No, I'm fine with it. I was just looking for what a name that I might recognize associated with.
It's the one where we had discussions about YMCA funding and Boys and Girls Club. They were giving it to specific organizations.
Right.
And we had conversations about, you know, for me, I wanted to see which organizations they were gonna give the money to, and it was the food bank and
Boys and Girls Club, the
Girls
Food
Club.
Bank, there is a short list of organizations that received the money.
Okay.
The organization in particular, which is having difficulty expending their funds, in order to receive the funds, they need to be able to show that they have COVID harm, either increased expenditures or decreased donations, and they were able to cover their COVID harm with other funds. And so that's why they haven't been able to claim the funds.
Yeah, that was the food bank, right?
I don't believe so.
Which
Jenica is here if she can provide a perspective.
is Jenica on? Yeah, there we go.
There are a few organizations under the United Way contract that after their initial grant have some funding left that they're looking to potentially have another wave of COVID harm analysis starting now to towards the end of the year.
So we're working with them to determine, is there a way for them to actually claim the money in a way that's legit? But right now, there's quite a bit of money on the table.
Okay. That's good.
And then as Diana said, one of the organizations that for nonprofit grants, that's totally gone. They claimed all of the money that was earmarked for them,
Which grants one? Which one?
for nonprofits.
Oh,
900,000 had been
No, got it.
approved.
Yeah, 900,000 and approved and handed out to nonprofit organizations.
I believe the expenditures for the grants themselves were 810, which was handed out, and the rest was reserved for admin. So the grant portion is spent out.
Okay. So the next slide is just a copy of the table, and we wanted to hit the high points on it. We're not gonna go line by line, but some of the high points on the allocation table. And you've got there's
Same one.
two, and there's two for a reason.
This is the same one that's in the packet.
This is the same one that's on that slide. So some of the areas, and I'm gonna focus on the column that still says under consideration. So there's PPE for residential care facilities. We haven't moved that to the approved yet. We need to just leave it there in case it's something we need. But so far, anything we've needed for the PPE for residential care has come out of FEMA or Department of Health. So we haven't had to use any of that. It's a small amount of money. If we get to 2024 and we only have 100,000 to worry about how to spend, we'll figure out a way, but, so that one's not big. Installing video court equipment in the jail housing units. That is a capital project that I recently talked to you about. I'm going to ask you to move that to the approved column so that we can get the project underway, because I just hired a new project manager who can take that on.
That's 900,000.
That's 900,000, and it's 1.4 B's and dog.
Commissioners, on the second sheet that you have is where
That-
the proposal changes
Yeah.
from this one.
The
This is what you've seen last,
right, that's where we're at.
and this is the proposed,
Highlighted.
yellow
This is-
highlights
yep.
are the proposed
This
changes.
is what it would look like if you approved our
The blue,
recommendations.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I got one there and one here, right?
Right,
One's spent, one's not. Got it?
No, this is the status quo, this is the proposal.
right. So if I drop down to the next item that's still under consideration, that's $1 million reserve for public health. That is necessary, we need to leave it there. There was a little while, a few months ago, we thought we were gonna have to spend it, but the
Okay,
state of
could
Washington.
you give me the number, like 1.6? or-
That
It's
is
1.14.B, B as in boy,
Okay.
about halfway down the page.
Reserve for public health, got it.
Yep, reserved for public health. So we are recommending that that remain there in case the time comes when we need it. We'll look at that again in 6 to 8 months from now and see how things are going. Then I'm gonna drop down to the 2.15A for affordable housing, and that's got $7.5 million is still under consideration, and I think you've got a plan for that.
Yes, and this is related to you will hear the whole proposal that's going to be submitted to the state tomorrow morning. And this is related to the encampments on the DOTs right away. We already received $3.5 million, and you approved that. So the $7.5 million is a potential match for acquiring potential 2 hotels in Thurston County. Obviously, the $7.5 million will not purchase everything that is going to help to bridge the gap. So this expenditure, if the board approve, this money, if the board approves the plan, and if those sales materialize, that expenditure will be done, or drawn down the fund.
Where did the 1.5 go toward that's already allocated?
The 1.5 you already authorized, and that was to jointly buy the property of Franz Anderson with the city of Olympia.
Okay, we're talking about 2.15A, right? Affordable housing.
Yeah, 2.15A.
So the board made a decision to move out of the $9 million, $1.5 million. And we already spent that. And that is, with the City of Olympia, no quite, but is we purchased the Franz Anderson property. And also there is a set aside to continue to support the development of that property for the next phase.
Right.
Okay, at what point are we gonna have more discussion on the expenditure of that for buying a hotel?
Tomorrow morning
Tomorrow morning we will?
is more a larger plan.
Okay.
And obviously this will not.
I gotta say that as we move forward on that, I can't imagine that I'm gonna be supportive of just purchasing and giving rooms to people without having law enforcement, everybody else that's involved, a new medical room, some kind. They're gonna overload our medical system if we keep allowing these people to come from all around the United States and move in here and expect we're gonna take care of their every need. We just don't have the capability, so just so you know.
Comment for tomorrow.
Okay, I won't say more. I won't say more tonight, or this afternoon.
All right, continuing down this list, I'm gonna flip to the second page. And just mention that 236B is in boy, the Thurston County agricultural support. That is still $1 million under consideration. And Jenica has been working with Stephen Bramwell to come up with a plan for how to use that money, and we're still working on that.
Does that fall under food security?
Yes?
Okay, I
Yeah,
think that's
and
just
we're
fine.
able to show that the agricultural is an affected industry
Yep,
and affected to a greater extent than tourism when it comes to employment numbers. And now it's how to address that. And we're pretty close to a proposal, but it's not quite cooked yet.
Just as a point of interest, I guess we discussed a little bit as we move along, where we're moving some people out over in that building that we bought for the auditor. There's people there that use that kind of as a makerspace and do canning and a couple other things like that are ag related that need to have a place to go because we're kind of kicking them out. And I think down there where Commissioner Mejia and I have been proposing to do something on the ag part, I don't see why we couldn't put more in there and create a more expanded version of that along with that plant we're talking about. So,
We are looking at that very
Okay.
possibility.
So can I just ask
Sure.
a follow-up to that? So, because that was, actually, I had marked it down because I know that in conversations with Ramiro before, we were looking at the possibility because I know the Ag Park said they were short of funding. Is that one of the options that we're looking at to possibly fund them?
I think that at the end of the day, it's not like you've got 36 million to reallocate, but I think that when we hit more realistic numbers, that you're gonna have somewhere in the $3 to $5 million that you'll be able to reallocate. But once we, do we want to devote it to the ag park? That's something that we're looking at to see if it's even qualified. So we're working very hard to see how that qualifies.
And that was one item where Congresswoman Strickland said she was very interested, and she said if the county needed help with that, she was more than happy to have her staff help in finding out more information to make sure it qualified. So just
Good to know, because that's something we're struggling with on how the ag park could qualify at all.
Because the gap is in construction.
Right.
And the gap in construction was there before the pandemic.
Can't link it to COVID.
I just want to remind everyone where that money earmark came from. and I'm not against anything that's been said, maybe Agri Park or whatever, but there was a comprehensive ag proposal, and we've got the market grants, two things up there.
What line are you on, sir?
I'm on 2.36.
Okay, got it.
So there was a chunk of the proposal that said help for labor, like labor shortages in the ag. And the commissioners were like, well, what are you gonna do with $1 million to solve the labor market? And they couldn't articulate, and even the ag committee admitted, we don't really have this fleshed out. Give us a chance to flesh this out. So that earmark is for stopping a labor shortage. Now, if they can't do that, I'm not saying that I wouldn't consider other ag-related purposes, but that's not what, I think that money should go kind of back for general consideration if it's not geared toward the labor shortage that they were initially pitching, because that's why we set it aside.
That is what they're focusing on.
That is,
Because that is what we could show was the COVID farm that qualifies the industry.
Okay.
So right now, and maybe Jenica would be able to speak to it better than me, but right now, the shape of the proposal, if you will, is an employment program where unemployed workers would attend certain types of training related to the ag industry. They would be placed with an agricultural company or like on a farm or processing or what have you. And then we would pay their wages for a certain length of time. That's the structure of the certain proposal, but it is directed exactly at the employment end.
But the key in there, whether the unemployed farm workers has been the result of the pandemic.
Right.
And so, and we're looking at whether we can connect the dots on that. So that's what we are ready at this point to bring you that proposal because we need to do a due diligence.
I think another tie-in is on food security in general, the same way we're putting money in food banks. Same, I mean, it's all connected.
So I just brought the ag park just more of a general idea, just like Commissioner Edwards did, not specifically for that, because
Yeah.
I know Stephen Bramwell and Jenica, and I saw Jenica turn on her camera, so I'll let her speak on it. It's something that they've been working on and trying to kind of come up with this whole proposal. So Jenica, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to what Robin said or.
Sure. I think for the most part that summed it up. We have been working to develop a workforce development ag labor proposal that will be for those funds because we qualified the industry, as Robin said, as impacted. We would be able to pay for the wages to support workers at ag businesses, and I believe the proposal is looking at about a year placement. And so we're just fine tuning some of the details on how that looks, but we have the majority of the proposal ready.
Thank you.
All right, so moving down the list, we've already talked about the court backlog rate of expenditures. We know that it has been difficult for the prosecutor and public defense to fill the attorney positions that have been approved for them. That is probably the thing that is holding it back the most. And while that occurs, the backlog's continuing to grow.
So
But they're gonna run out of time. I mean, there's not like, it's not like they can just go buy a hotel. Like, it's a very steady process of attorney salaries to do attorney work. It can't accelerate beyond a certain pace.
that was the message that I provided to all involved in the backlog, the courts, the prosecutors, and the public defender. Because some of their proposals would need more people. They said, but if you cannot even find the people that you need to keep the wheel moving, you know, the board can add 10 more positions.
But
You can't fill.
For what purpose? Because at the end of the day, my concern, our concern is the rate of expenditures. If we are not getting to the point of rate of expenditures, I put them on notice in a way. I said, I will not be waiting until 2024 to bring back to the board saying, we have this money, now what to do. So they, the next meeting, they said by September, they should have the process in place to keep moving, and hopefully we'll have a more rate of expenditures.
If it's a legal expenditure, this business bonuses and stuff to get people to come to work, I think is a valid expenditure of that. We might have to
Recruiting
do.
bonuses
Huh?
for, recruiting bonuses.
Yeah,
for the
recruiting
attorneys.
bonuses, retention, I don't care what it is, but
That's
if
what
we
it
can
takes to
legally
solve the
do it.
problem. I mean,
So one of the requests, and you will see this coming up, is the positions, the temporary positions for the backlog the board approved had an end date of 2023. They would like to extend the end date to make it more attractive. That is procedure, so just bring it over,
that's easy.
we'll process through, low-hanging fruit. But what I got from John and Patrick, in a way, is not necessarily about the money. It's just no attorneys. There are no attorneys.
But maybe there'd be more interested if there was a
So
bigger bonus.
there are really no attorneys because every single county is going through the same process.
Right, and that's why they're all given a bonus as well, so maybe we have to bump our bonus
I
up.
wouldn't say everyone.
Well, but most.
So we'd have to look very carefully to see if we could do bonuses under the recovery fund. Because what you can do is premium pay, and premium pay is targeted at a very narrow group of people. So hiring bonuses might have to come out of the lost revenue.
Which we're gonna touch base on the last review.
Yeah, we'll touch
So,
on
I
that.
mean, I guess my question before we move off this line is, is the court system, I'll just say, I know it's John and Patrick and maybe Judge Wilson or whatever, but I mean, collectively, is the court system still believing that they can spend $8 million by the next year? Or are they backing off? I mean, I think at a certain point, they're gonna have to give up the ghost.
They'd have to double everything.
They might get to
They're not
4 million, but they're not gonna get to 8.
That is an excellent question, but I think it's my humble perspective. It's a reluctance to accept that.
Mhm.
So, and that's just the reality. So I will, for me, I will recommend again a couple more months to
Well, if
see.
we accept it, it really doesn't matter if we
Well,
accept it.
So I
We can
would
accept it for
recommend,
them.
recommend the board to hold on this, and see.
Give 'em till
in a
September.
couple of months, see how this is moving. And then because we will have to bring you this whole plan periodically for you to have the pulse on the finger. The
Well-
finger on the pulse.
I guess like, I don't know, if we're gonna start talking about ideas, for me, like, especially, it won't help that the backlog, but, you know, we funded the substance abuse monitoring, right? And have a contract in place, and they requested $1 million, wasn't it? And we funded it halfway.
I think so.
Yeah, give them the other half.
I was like, give them the other half, right? Because they already have a program in place that's working. And they said that this would last a year, and so we know that they'll be able to go through that money. That's already, you know, so for me, that it's an easy way to just fund that program another year. They obviously have people being able to access that. It's a
Right.
but, you know, and if we're gonna expand, you know, I would love to see something like this for pretrial services too. I mean, don't they have services that they offer to people where they have to pay? They're on the pretrial services governing board, so I'm looking at you on kind of what those services, and
So if we can frame it in a strategy to keep people out of the jail, considering the jail continues to have outbreaks regularly,
Incubator.
yeah, then yes, but it's gotta be an effort to keep, you know, somehow we have to relate these things to COVID. Here we are, 2 years out, over 2 years out, and as we get farther and farther away from March of 2020, it becomes harder and harder to relate costs to COVID, the impact of COVID, and yet that is what we're required to do with these expenses.
But there's other categories that you don't have to do that, like infrastructure.
That is the
So put a solar
category.
panel on every building in Thurston County. I mean, I'm not gonna jerk around with these, like, trying to massage spending that's, stretching the boundaries when there's other categories, that are not so limited. I don't really understand.
But for the infrastructure, it's a specific for sewer and water.
Water and sewer.
Oh, water and sewer.
So that's the thing,
And
I
then there's
just wanna.
housing, but I'm just saying, there's other,
Right,
we don't need to go to that. There's other categories that are not quite
so
so.
then, I believe the board will have opportunities, for instance, going back to Commissioner Mejia's idea. The board already funded $500,000 for home monitoring devices.
Yeah, well, that one makes sense.
And this is gonna last only for 2022. There's an opportunity for the board to continue that process, which helps the pretrial avoid individuals going to jail.
Yeah,
Right.
no, that one's easy, I
So,
think.
That's
so
right.
options.
So, as we were saying, we want to give it a little longer, but pretty soon, I think you're going to be pulling money out of the court backlog item. I think that's where there's, almost a
They're
sure
not gonna
bet.
get 4 million, I mean, they're never gonna get to 2, I don't think.
Yeah, that's how it's feeling, but,
And,
if they
and
fill those
also-
positions, they
Also,
might.
part of the message was, that I said to the group is, beyond December 31st, 2024, there is no more money to address the backlog. It isn't.
That's right. That's the window for this. Okay, dropping down to the infrastructure, water and sewer projects. We didn't ask today, but very soon I will be asking you to move the water and sewer project amounts under consideration into the approved column. Because if for no other reason,
Need to obligate it.
yes, we need to obligate it.
At one point, you had us reduce, I can't remember why, but we reduced by 250,000 each project. I have that on my notes.
Yep.
So why was that? What did we need the $1 million?
We needed the $1 million. Do you remember what we did that?
I think it was to
Oh.
capture,
The employee,
yep,
it was to cover the cost of employee leave and,
and also to cover the claim of the loss of revenue of the full 10 million.
right,
Okay, so I'm just wondering, I mean, that was one place it seemed like we could restore that if we had the capacity.
True, yes.
And that covers the presentation that we had today, is that right?
yesterday.
Was it yesterday?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
just yesterday.
Okay, good enough. I think that's a good use of that, to make it good.
Yeah, and that way Public Works get their foot off the pedal and they can go
Go
and
and
we
get
can
it
call
done.
it obligated and, report it that way to the feds. Then there's the broadband, 3.5 million that you haven't approved yet out of the 4 million for broadband. And we think that will get used.
Yeah, that's the hope. We're hoping to learn on hopefully the end of the year, the application that Nisqually tribe submitted to the state. And hopefully this money will just complement that. And that will be an implementation next year, hopefully.
How about Chehalis tribe? Did they do something as well? Did they do something on this?
I haven't heard any.
They partnered with Nisqually.
Well, somehow
On
they're
their piece,
connected
they
in there.
were, yeah.
And I'd hate to leave them out if we're, I've never been in favor of an exclusive agreement, so that's why I'm thinking
I
of the
believe
Chehalis tribe.
The Chehalis tribe was coordinated with the Nisqually.
Okay, just as long as they're working together to solve a community problem, and they can get some of the action as well, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Under lost revenue, this is your really flexible money. So we claimed just under 2.5.
What number are you on again?
I am, oh, sorry,
61.
Commissioner, 61A.
Okay, got it.
So this is the lost revenue. We've already claimed just under 2.5 million that we transferred into the general fund. We're there's a whole long story about the working with the state auditor on that, but it's totally legit.
Is this deal with the sheriff's office and that stuff going
No,
on there?
there's a lot of things going on there,
Okay.
but, so we've used 2.5. I, have an additional 2.5, 7, so 3.5, 4.5 million in your general fund forecast, which leaves $3 million for you to choose how you'd like to spend. And that can be spent on any legitimate government cost that is not a contribution to a pension fund, a contribution to a rainy day fund, payments on prior debt, or a reduction in taxes. Those are the 4 things you cannot do with the money. Other than that, you can pay for anything you'd like.
Okay, why do you say 3 or 4 million? How come it's not 7.5 million?
Because 7.5 million, I've already assumed in your general fund forecast to be used. That's part of your forecast that supports the
On one-time
fund balance.
expenditures?
On one-time expenditures over the next 3 years.
How much have you spent out of there?
In total, I will have spent 7 million out of the general fund already. That the
So
board
that's
has approved.
5 plus 2.5 million that's already
There's 3 million still available to
3
you.
million, okay.
So the 3 million is what we can use to, that's,
Bonuses.
the
Yes.
bonuses is the
And-
staff
and
recommendation for
You may remember
that.
when we had this conversation and we worked through
Yeah.
the financial model as to what a potential bonus the board may consider. And we had a couple of iterations as to the amount of that bonus. I don't know if you recall that briefing. And that money will come out of this because that's the claiming the loss of revenue, move most of the restrictions out of it, out of the federal requirements and put in the general fund, except for the 4 categories there. So this is the most flexible. You have about $3 million.
Yeah, you've got $3 million. So that's one thing that you could consider. You could,
Do,
whatever you please with that 3
We
million.
could do park upgrades, trail
Yep, yes,
activity.
you could.
Instead of 40 miles, we could do 45 miles or whatever.
Yep, you could spend it on the roads. You could, what else would you, I mean,
I guess right off the
Whatever.
bat, I mean, just so we do it and do it legally, I mean, we're doing a couple things in parks and I think we're taking it out of REIT 2 or something like that for $1 million restrooms here and $500,000 there. A few things like that, and then we're depleting some of those funds pretty good, and we'd be able to do something else later. Because I guess this money we can't put in save, we can't just put it in
that's
savings.
correct. It cannot go
So
into
we
a rainy
spend
day
their
fund.
money and keep our other money in reserve. So,
Right.
something to think about.
So
or may consider a bonus for
Yeah.
employees.
your employees,
Well,
that's an option. It's an option.
we could put in gas pumps and electric things, just give it her all away.
Yes, you could. You definitely could. Any legitimate government purpose that is not those 4 things is a legitimate use of this money.
I'm not voting to spend it on fossil fuel consumption in
Okay.
any form.
Electricity is produced by coal.
No, it won't be. It's
Well,
phased
but it
out.
is now.
It's part, and we're phasing it out. Legislature is
Whole nother discussion,
Okay,
Madam
hold on.
Chair.
Yes, it is. All right, so moving on, in 7.1A, you have obligated, 547,000. That is to pay the costs for the 2 FTEs that you approved. Diana, the program manager, the ARPA program manager, senior management analyst, and then the position that you approved in Financial services is getting charged to this, but you've still got over $1 million that we have in the admin category that's not really designated for any specific thing. We're still buying PPE in central services. We still have to pay for additional cleaning under L&I because there's still a governor's emergency order. But those things, it's being spent slow, so there's money there. And then there's almost 600,000 that's not allocated yet. So I think that when the time comes for you to do what else do we want to fund, there's gonna be somewhere between $3 to $5 million to use.
And that 600,000 cannot be used for the one-time bonuses? No, it has to be from that other
Because we,
lost revenue fund.
you may remember, we only had the one opportunity, one chance to claim lost revenue.
Yeah,
And we maximized that to 10 million.
yeah.
We cannot come back ask for more lost revenue. That was it. We maximized that opportunity. What?
But it's not asking for lost revenue, but instead it's bonuses for retention.
Again, the premium pay is very narrow to a certain group of employees. So it would be extremely difficult to justify.
Okay.
All right, so that's the rundown of
Can you
allocation.
clarify something for me on that? Just going back to the courts, I thought the courts have got about $7 million that they're gonna have available if they don't get off the
6.7.
Well,
dime.
When the time comes, there might be
So I
more
mean,
than
we've
5
got,
million.
we're gonna have more like 10 million.
Well, it could be that high, but, conservatively speaking, in the near term, I can tell you that there's going to be 3 to 5 million. I think you'll have more.
But related to the core backlogs, in 2 months, I wouldn't recommend the board just to take everything off from that line item.
Right. Not
Because
too
we
much.
need to continue to
No,
support.
right, we can't take it all,
But certainly, the conservative perspective is here, but certainly it's opportunity to have more.
How about that security? The security things from TCOM and that we need to fix, is that not something that we can do since,
You could do that out of the lost revenue.
but not out of just ARPA?
It's not the right kind of infrastructure to qualify. The infrastructure is water, sewer, stormwater, they added, and broadband. And that's pretty much it.
But we did the install video court equipment and jail housing unit, so why wouldn't?
That's COVID related
COVID.
because
Safety.
when you
Proximate
get an
postman.
outbreak, they can't move to the video area to attend court and it brings the courts down. So that keeps them in their pods, reduces exposure.
how about a fairgrounds building? We
Fairgrounds.
park vehicles in there, the health mobile, the vaccination spots, all the stuff. We used it a lot. The weather, was fortunate, but we might need a big covered
And we
area.
paid for that.
I know, but just saying,
What about
We pay with the relief fund, a lot of that stuff this year.
you said stormwater is added, so can that buy the bridge at Country Club Road for $9 million?
I wonder if that is considered stormwater.
well, it only washes out during a storm.
That is,
Yeah, I mean,
That
that-
would be under the Federal Department of Ecology guidelines for, there's certain guidance that your projects have to fall under to
I would
qualify.
because that project is not necessarily related to have an issue with stormwater, we have an issue with habitat.
No, it's not habitat, Ramiro, the culvert collapsed.
Yeah. That has nothing, the fish didn't do that with their
Fish
tail.
weren't even getting up there before, is what they're saying.
But the intent, I think we have outlined it, but let me look at it. I mean, that's a good option to,
If it collapses all the way, it washes the road
Maybe we could
out.
frame it differently.
so,
This is not just a fish passage project, we weren't even having it on the list, this was an infrastructure failure
Right.
Yes.
that that we could do some things that would help the habitat as a side benefit, but, I mean, I'm not even stretching, I mean, I'm just speaking the absolute truth. This is just dealing with the infrastructure problem, and we want to do it in a way that will help fish if we
Let's
can.
think outside the box as much as we can.
Aside the box culvert.
All right.
Hey, Jenica. Are you there?
Yes.
Can you reach out to Public Works to frame this particular project to see if there's an opportunity to use ARPA funds?
Diana would.
Sure.
Diana. No.
Diana would do that.
Yeah. So we'll.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Let's explore that option.
Jenica? For the ag park down in Tenino, wasn't it only $500,000 that they were short of?
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yes, it was around that amount.
Okay, then I'll send an email to Congresswoman Strickland, and I'll include you, Robin. And just that way,
That's fine. We're working, we're
there can be
looking for a way to
conversations.
get there. If they think they can justify it, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
how they could get there.
So all this is great ideas, absolutely great ideas. That
So
would
we
be-
can spend the money if.
I'm sure that you will all have ideas
So
on how
what
to
I
spend
recommend,
the money.
is great ideas, maybe in a month or so, we'll bring back this plan again
Right,
and give you a much better perspective. And then you can start making some decision as to where you want to move the
I
funds.
think that at this juncture, we should be every 2 months, have this kind of a briefing where we just
Yep.
monitor. Where is
We
it
can
going,
totally
how's
do
it
that.
going?
Yes, sir.
all right, so I'm gonna turn it back to Diana, and we're gonna go to slide number 7. So advance us to, and Diana's gonna talk about the allocation changes we would like you to approve today.
And those are the yellow.
Okay.
Take it away.
Okay, so we discussed lots of different things today, but there's a few things in particular we were hoping for your approval of today, and those are the following. A few of them are recent changes to contracts which affect the allocations. One of them is a $500,000 increase to the small business startup project, bringing the new total to 1 million. And that allows 5 more participants to have awards for the small businesses. And the funds for that were adjusted from the overall minority enterprise investment. The new total for that would be 2.3 million.
Line items 2.29B
Yeah.
and 2.29C.
Okay, so is that going through the EDC?
Yes.
Both of
That's
those,
correct.
both of those dollar amounts?
So
Right,
So it'd be 3.3 million going to
So the
EDC?
total allocation has not changed to the ADC, is moving the activities around.
So it's moving from this one, because it was 2.8, so it's moving $500,000 from this one, and it's now 2.3. And then it goes down to the small business startup, and that's $1 million.
Okay.
My question in regards to that one is, for the minority business investment, they've only spent 1.3.
yeah.
So they have a lot of cushion for that. And will they be able to spend the rest of that, what's left of that $1 million down?
We'll, Jenica will work with the EDC on the, that probability.
But on the flip side with that, Madam Chair, on the following item, the small business startup, it was only allocated 500, but the need came larger than that. So, and that the adjustment really met the need. It will continue to,
How much can you get for that, Jenica? Small business startup?
Up to 100,000.
up to 175,000. What was it, Jenica?
We allowed a range of 75,000 to 100,000. I believe they have selected on the EDC's end the 10 that they would like to offer the grants to. So I believe that each one of those would be selecting the $100,000 award.
And for me, I know that Jenica and the EDC were extremely inventive as to how this could occur. And materialize on something to help business getting up and going. Great program.
No, we got some fraud protection built in there.
As you heard this morning from, sorry, I didn't want to get into the exact, so we conducted a sub-recipient monitoring with the EDC.
Okay.
And the sub-recipient monitoring resulted and they have good practices to check that. And I believe that you heard that this morning.
Great. All right, next, Diana?
Sure. Robin already mentioned this one. The next change is $100,000 pulled back from the COVID-19 vaccination incentive program.
Which number are we at?
That is line 11A.
Got it.
144 and okay.
Yep, and it's money that we never could develop a program around it.
Yeah, it wasn't fast enough and there wasn't really anything that we could work with.
Didn't you buy a motorhome somewhere,
So that's-
Oldsmobile, or a van?
A vaccination
Van?
Where you
incentive.
at, Ron?
Yeah, didn't you do something like that?
That was 11A. We're reducing that by $100,000.
Got it.
Any other questions on that one?
No.
So the next one is the $2,500 the commissioners approved for the Tenino Young at Heart Theater grant support. And the place that we're at on that right now is the contract is with Elizabeth for review.
Right.
We're trying to push that through so they can have the money for their event at the end of the month.
Perfect.
Okay, moving on. The other allocation changes we wanted to review with you for your approval. The $900,000 to install video court equipment in jail housing units Robin mentioned. We were hoping that you would move that from the under consideration column to the approve column. And lastly, an increase to the COVID paid leave for county employees of $3,024 to account for the final expenditures in that project, which has concluded.
What line?
It went over slightly,
It went over slightly.
yeah.
Which one is
That
This is
that is-
1.7D.
Yeah, 17D is in dog. It went up,
What,
The-
17D,
yeah, 17D, that was the,
paid leave?
yep, the paid leave, and you see it, already adjusted on the approved on the current, because we spent it. Quite frankly, we couldn't shut the leave payments in the payroll system. We tried to get as close as we could to the, 520,000 that the board approved, and it went over a little.
Oh,
So we just need your approval for the
for the
little bit more.
3,024.
Yeah.
And this is the money to pay for when people took a day off after they got their vaccination, or
I
they got their incentive day off, or it's gone.
And the tap for that one is shut off now.
Yep, yes,
Okay.
shut it off.
So, commissioners, are these allocations approved? Do we have thumbs up on the changes that we just went over?
Yeah.
So you have
Perfect.
3 thumbs up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next slide.
Who's taking notes? Make sure that we capture that
We'll,
decision.
we'll make sure that that gets into the notes from the session. So Romero, could you move to the next slide, please? All right.
Lastly, we wanted to go over with you the ARPA Recovery Fund Community Survey, which I believe you have a copy of the draft of in your packet. The survey will be deployed in the coming weeks to inform the public of county COVID-19 spending and to gather some community input. So the results of the survey are meant to gauge community priorities in ARPA Recovery Fund spending, especially as you're making decisions about reallocations. And there's also space for community members to write in ideas.
So is this part of the requirements of the federal money?
It is.
And do
We are
hold a
required
public
to.
meeting?
We could hold a public meeting. What we're planning to do, though, is put out a simple survey.
Who, how and who and all that.
We're just gonna do a very simple, non-scientific survey that won't cost us a lot of money. And we're working with Megan on how to advertise it. It'll be open to any citizen who'd like to give us input on how the next phase of the money, when you've got this next pot of money to allocate out, we'd like to hear what the public thinks about.
I'm just initial blush, I'm concerned about us doing that, because maybe we're biased, I don't know that. But what about the EDC or, community planning, Mark's outfit that doesn't like you? Why can't?
Mark Alfred doesn't like me.
So for anyone else to run a survey, we would have to pay for that. And if you're interested in paying for
Well, I
a
don't
survey, then
I'm just thinking that, we pick them and I'll send one to my cousin and somebody else. I'd rather have somebody else do it that's unbiased and not affiliated with us to get a more, a more valid response.
we're not gonna choose who takes the survey. We're gonna post it on our website and in our social media and.
I'm not, I don't look at social media, I don't look at websites, I talk to people all the time. And
Great.
these groups also talk to people, the ones I'm referring to.
Yeah,
And the EDC, and maybe United Way.
and we can certainly push the information out through them. But we were looking for an inexpensive way. It's a one-question survey. How do you think the board should allocate the next pot of money?
Well, I thought
And
we just
to
got done,
prioritize.
we're kind of making that after the fact, aren't we?
Well,
Well,
not necessarily, because you have capacity to make additional decisions with the money that is going to be left over. And this will be yet another tool that you may consider.
What's the word, is there questions here that I'm not seeing?
right here,
The last one.
there's one question.
Rank the following
It's
areas
another
of
piece of
investment.
Yep,
This,
on a scale of 1 to 5, how important would you make
Right
it?
here, got it, okay.
And it's the last page.
And then we're gonna say, what's your zip code, so we can gauge how many people are in which areas of the county.
Okay. Oh, it's 301. Go
So,
ahead.
Okay, well,
so just to,
that's just a suggestion.
thank you.
Squawk about it.
To wrap up this, I'll just wrap this up quickly, because we are a little over time. The next steps are, just to wrap it up, you're going to have an opportunity, we're gonna bring back, I like the idea of every 2 months, so you can see how things are going. You have time to make thoughtful decisions around this. You'll have some information from the community survey that we put out. There's lots of things to consider, and there's not a deadline that's coming right up, but sooner is better so that we can spend all the funds that we receive. That's what we have for
in
you
a
to do.
2-month period, the next meeting is going to be a very robust conversation.
Yep,
How about the Chamber of Commerce, including them in the question here?
we'll absolutely include all of our partners. Yep.
Okay.
Although the
Thank
Chamber
you.
of Commerce is heavily involved in the Thurston Strong initiative.
Yes.
Okay.
I
It
want to
is,
thank the staff. Thank the staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica.
I was like, I want to make sure. Okay, well,
Awesome,
thank
awesome.
you. It is 3:02 PM and we are adjourned. Thank you so much for this presentation.